Space, the second to last frontier.
Second to last?
Isn't it the final?
Disney World. I haven't been.
I haven't been either. I've lived here for 6 years.
Alaska. I want to go to Alaska. It's the third to last frontier.
Hold on, is it the third?
Like, it's a cool frontier.
You sound terrible. Doug sounds insane.
I'm dying.
No,
We're falling apart
We're
after
back
China.
in America. I know. China.
China does everything better. Their illnesses. We're fucking chalked, man.
Yeah.
We are still in rough shape. All
We
three
have
of us, I
been
think.
rough. I got beat up on the basketball court. It's all falling
Jet
apart.
lag like revitalized my cold. I think was almost over it, and then returned home to America. And I'm pork, man.
That's why we have to go to space.
When actually, that's why
That's
space.
why space
The
is the
final
frontier.
Ish, second or third to last.
Second or third.
Yeah.
Between Disney World,
Which
Alaska.
You guys need to have gone. You live right next to it.
Live next to Alaska?
Yeah, well, either way, you live close enough. I don't want to go.
I think if you do the math, the moon is as far from Los Angeles as Alaska.
Have you seen that Shaq where he said the moon must be closer than Atlanta because he can see the moon, but he can't see?
That's a good
That's
point.
like
That's a great point.
the Shaq clip where he's talking about if you fill up your gas tank when it's 3/4 full, you're only paying like half as much or something. He's trying to explain that if you always fill up, you
Only
pay
fill it
less
halfway,
overall.
You pay less gas. Yeah.
Okay, well, there's one big pressing story right now, and it's that Trump made a very threatening announcement on social media.
Yeah, pull this up, Perry. Look, I mean, we're going to talk about the Artemis 2 mission and what's going on with space. And I actually have a lot of questions for you because I don't know too much about it because I am a simpleton on Earth. I'm a simple
Unlike
Earthling.
me, who's done a day of...
I want to learn more about it. But this tweet did just come out, this truth, I'm sorry. And it's fucking deranged. A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. We will find out tonight one of the most important moments in the long and complex history of the world. God bless the great people of Iran, which is a great thing you can say.
Wow, I thought this one was those fucking
No, I
crazy
got that one right
lunatics
here.
better open the...
Open the fucking straight, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah.
Do you think he's watching like Rambo and
I don't
shit like at
understand.
night?
I mean, this is beyond.
He's been in like a spree. Like he's like sitting down with his mates to watch all of them in a row, and in between each movie, he does a new tweet.
So I think it's fair to call the language and the threats here as absolutely insane. And the reason we aren't talking about this is like the main section of the episode right now is we're recording this a few hours before the supposed deadline of when Trump is threatening action at the moment. And so by the time you're listening to this, something will have potentially happened, and we'd be guessing a lot in the discussion. We're going to talk a little bit about Iran, about the Iran war later in this episode, but we have an interview lined up with Senator Mark Kelly, former astronaut, and want to talk about the Artemis program and some of the things that have been going on with that. And then we'll do some Iran discussion at the end of this episode that by the time you listen to this, depending on what happens...
Yeah, we'll almost certainly be out of date.
Yeah.
We'll either have backed down, which is I'm praying for, right?
Yeah.
God, we hope so. Based on what he's done, likely the outcome is that he'll back down. But if he doesn't, then he's crossed a truly insane line, and then whatever we say will be completely out of date. So we're sort of we're keeping updated on it, and we'll talk about it more next week. But it's our first.
We're gonna look like real goofs if we post this video tomorrow, right? As World War III has started.
Yeah, we're talking about.
God.
Yeah. I mean,
It's officially started, and we're
it's
just
like the space
This is the space
And
episode.
it's like we're in World War III. That is a real outcome, but we can't do the World War III episode before it happens. So,
But I do want to talk about Artemis. So for the people that don't know, the current ongoing mission.
Here, bring this up while you're talking. This is if you go to nasa.gov/track Artemis, you can see right now where the Orion capsule currently is in their mission around the moon. Go ahead, Aiden. It's cool. It's an interactive thing they made in Unity.
Yeah, so this is the first mission ever where we've sent humans around the dark side of the moon.
Oh, shit.
But or anything around? Not anything.
It's technically one of the Apollo missions. We did go around the moon. They literally like the oxygen tanks were or helium tanks were breaking, so they had to slingshot around the back of the moon.
Okay.
But
That's badass.
But this is the first planned one.
Okay. The
Like,
first,
literally?
the first intended mission around the dark side of the moon. And I think one of the crazy things about this, other than I don't think we've sent humans even around the moon in decades, is the length of time that they went fully without communications to Earth. Like as soon as they go around that other side of the moon, they're completely in the dark, and we don't know until they come back around whether or not they're okay, able to communicate with them again. And you have been looking into this the most in preparation for this interview. Anything else that really stands out?
Okay, I want to give a brief outline of the NASA history and what led up to this. And I'm actually going to make an argument that I hope Senator Mark Kelly, who's like a badass astronaut, by the way, that we're going to get to talk to, hopefully doesn't watch this part of the episode. I don't think this mission's that hype. It's, it's the upcoming ones that are really hype.
Oh, there's more.
Yeah, so it's the first stage of a big program that's being
There's
rolled
an
out.
Artemis expanded universe. And
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
sort of
the
kickoff.
ACU.
Yeah, the ACU, okay.
All right.
So, and I'll tell you how it lines up with Marvel Civil War later.
Okay,
You're
good.
always excited for that
Yeah,
part.
I'm excited for
Okay,
that.
what? But the crazy thing is there's like a new, it's the equivalent of the DC universe. China's been now kicking off their own.
Okay, I see.
Like,
I see.
actually, it's getting kind of crazy. I think there's a lot of really exciting stories about this beyond this mission, weirdly enough, even though this mission is pretty hype. Okay, some key timelines in America's space exploration. 1961, our boy JFK says, we're going to go to the moon. We're going to beat the Russians there, right? So by 1967, we start running the Apollo missions, and they run through 1972. It's like 5 years.
And I think the framing for this at the time is in the greater space race, the USSR is kind of crushing the US. Like they're beating us to every first space milestone of like first person in space, first. And there's kind of there's a short list of like first space accomplishments. And then we kind of shift the goalposts and say, we will get to the moon first. And that will be kind of the American point of success in this grander space
They
race.
had Sputnik, the first satellite. And then
First satellite,
they launched
first human.
that, and then people were freaking out. And then JFK said, no, we got this. He said, we'll go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing. And I never knew what the other thing was. Does anyone know what that is? Well, that's an iconic line. But he just said, we'll go to the moon and we'll do the other thing. And
the other thing was bomber drop.
What was the other thing, bro? Trump is fulfilling JFK's legacy.
They didn't want us to know.
I see. That was a secret at the time.
That's why the Trump ran CIA killed him. So what's crazy,
young Trump.
dude? I feel like most people, and by that I mean literally me until yesterday, just kind of thought we landed on the moon once. We did it 6 times. We faked it 6 times.
Yeah, that's a dedication to faking it.
Why would you
risk
conspiracy
that?
theorists talk about the other 5 times?
No, literally. It's like we talk, you hear faking the moon landing so much it's a conspiracy. I think it literally warped my brain into thinking we went 1 time. We went 6 fucking times. People walked on the moon 6 times, including like a geologist for the last one.
Once you build an expensive soundstage in LA, you have to use it more than once. Otherwise, you're not getting your money's worth.
We owned it. We weren't renting it. So it was like, so we got to keep using this.
Otherwise, you're breaking the lease.
Okay, so this is the Apollo era. Badass. In fact, Apollo is actually the brother of Artemis, which is why this most recent one is named Artemis, the program.
hello.
So this is like the revival of it. All right, so Apollo, this is like the big, awesome one that we did super well. And this is like a 5-year period, and there's a whole bunch of missions. There's 17, ends with Apollo 17. And so then we're kind of silent for a while, and we shift to the space shuttle era. So, you know, if you've seen the Aiden, pull up a picture of a space shuttle, or whatever you think looks coolest.
The coolest one.
Yeah, the coolest looking one. Space shuttle is the one where it looks like, you know, I guess an airplane or something on the side of a rocket. And the whole idea is we're going to make it more reusable so it's cheaper. Ahead of their time. So that's like a 30-year period. It's 1981 until 2011. So like when we were kids, the space shuttle program was still running. Not only that, Senator Mark Kelly did one of the last ones. He was commander on one of the last space shuttle missions. And I want to ask him about this maybe, unless he'll like be upset and he'll say, no one talks to me about that. And he'll end the call. He was scheduled to do the final one. He was scheduled to be the commander of the final space shuttle mission. And then Congress was like, nah, let's do one more, like at the very end. So he doesn't get to have the honor. So like in the Wikipedia, it's like he was the last. I forget. It's
So
like
he
Endeavor.
still did it. They just did one after.
They did one after.
Okay,
Yeah.
I see. That's fine.
So this is like, one of the big success eras of the space shuttle. And so at this point, what's critical to recognize here is this all becomes about low Earth orbit. We're not going into deep space anymore. We're not going to the moon. So like once Apollo ends in 1972, we are not going to the moon ever again.
That's the last time someone walked on the moon?
Yeah. Not only last time someone walked on the moon, it's the last time we've sent people near the moon or anything like this. So the space shuttle era, that 30-year period, was just low Earth orbit and is basically about setting up the International Space Station. We did other things, got like the Hubble telescope and there's all these other things. But there's like 135 missions here. A couple hundred people went into space through this. So it's a big era for the United States, and we have this iconic thing. But then it starts to just become so expensive. The reusability is not really working out. They're having to refurbish everything. It's a lot of money. And eventually we're like, this program doesn't really make sense anymore. So it gets shuttered. And so from 2011 to 2020, America did not have a way to send astronauts into space, which is kind of wild. We're the ones who got people to the moon. We did space shuttle for 30 years, and we just didn't have a thing. And so for that 9-year period, we paid Russia to put our astronauts on their rockets to send to the International Space Station. It was, I believe the number was 80 or 90 million per seat, where we're like, hey, please send our guys into space to the space station together. And you had to go into like Kazakhstan and take one of their rockets. It's kind of wild.
So that's how we were getting people to the ISS during that period of time?
So for a 9-year period, America was paying Russia.
They had to drive out to Kazakhstan with a briefcase full of $90 million.
To hand it over.
Dark shades. The president had to do it. Obama had to do each one of these handovers.
Had to do a handoff, and then just like
Russia would say, we're not taking the money unless it comes from the top.
What if they took them to their own fake soundstage? What if it was all...
That's true. The Russia, because Kazakhstan is famous for a lot of sound stages and Hollywood industry.
Okay. I do think it's crazy though. I think a lot of people think it's crazy, but it's crazy that we went to the moon. I didn't know 6 times, but 6 times.
Yeah.
And then in 72, we just stopped.
It's
been 50 years and we're just like, no one on Earth, no other country's been like, let's do that.
We should also go. Yeah. We should whatever else. Yeah.
That's so wild to me.
Yeah. And it just became the International Space Station. Okay. So here's where it starts to get cool. And I think there's fun dynamics with company stuff on top of the coolness of space. So early 2010s, we don't have a space program. So NASA decides to kind of pivot. And in 2014, they give private contracts to companies to build a crew vehicle to the ISS. So the companies would own it and NASA would utilize them and pay them. So a big shift from how it was done in the past, where NASA designs everything, pays all these contractors, and they run everything. So they paid Boeing $4.2 billion and SpaceX $2.6 billion. And both of them were like, both of you, please go make a new spacecraft that you can launch our guys into the ISS. So you may have heard about this recently. So SpaceX proceeded to absolutely fucking crush it. They delivered it on time, under budget, and now have done dozens, I believe, of missions where they take people to the ISS. SpaceX currently is America's essentially only way of getting astronauts to space. And that's one of those things that, you can be a certified Elon hater, but it's fucking incredible. Like, because of them, we have incredibly cheap, affordable access to space. Boeing, on the other hand, which is a fun little side story. So they, again, start 2014, end up missing milestones. And then they try to launch something and the tests aren't working, their thing. And then they send it to NASA and there's a big problem. Finally, you might have heard about this in 2024. This is 4 years after SpaceX has successfully gone. They launched their Starliner and they send it to the ISS, and then parts break when they get to the International Space Station. And 2 astronauts get off, and this is in 2024, and they realize it's not safe enough to bring it home. So they have to send Boeing's ship back to Earth with no one in it. And the crew, instead of staying there for, I think it was 9 days or something, they're there for 9 months until eventually SpaceX goes and saves them. So I just want to...
I don't trust the Boeing Dreamliner to fly a plane on real ground.
Right.
Let alone this... Whenever I have a Boeing plane, I'm always a little bit more nervous than usual.
Yes.
So it's like, yeah, of course.
This, all the corporate decline you hear about Boeing and their planes getting worse. Yeah. This has been happening in the space program, where they were one of the key players in the early days, where they were making huge parts of these rockets and the shuttle
system.
systems.
If their main industry is planes and they can't handle that, I don't trust them on their side business of doing NASA's contract job of making space like that. Of course.
There was 2 Dreamliner accidents within this time period where everyone on board died.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone. It was hundreds of people.
So they are years and years and years over budget. Fortunately, NASA has been switching in a lot of projects, particularly this is like the commercial crew era, particularly when they go to private companies now and they say, you make a thing, we're going to use it. It's fixed price rather than cost plus. Cost plus means that if I pay you to make a thing, you charge me whatever it takes you to make it plus 15% profit, right? So cost plus is if you take 3 extra years to do it, that means you're making money the whole time. And not only do the costs keep going up, the bonus goes up and I have to pay all of it. Fixed price by contrast means you have $4 billion, make the thing. If you go over, it's on you. So fortunately, these projects were fixed price, where Boeing has basically done such a horrific job that they've lost over $2 billion. They were given 4.2, they're $2 billion over, and NASA has said, like, we don't know when we'll be using Starliner next. Probably we'll do 4 more missions with you instead of 6. So it's in the air whether they're even going to trust Boeing to do any more of these things after they've already spent $6 billion. So fortunately, this is one where like taxpayers aren't on the hook for Boeing doing a terrible job.
Sure.
And so they've been an absolute disaster. And it's funny because they're also contributing to what's going on currently with Artemis. But this is like the commercial era. And all this again was to basically rebuild the American system. So there's multiple companies that can get human beings to the ISS.
And maybe you can speak to this. My understanding is that this is seen as pretty successful because ultimately what they get is a comparatively cost-effective option from SpaceX compared to the previous era where NASA was paying for like in-house or proprietary designs of these ships.
Yes. And what's really interesting about this Artemis program is that it's now a hybrid of those 2 models. It's really strange. So basically, yes, this commercial era has been very successful. To put it differently, the truth is SpaceX has been really successful. They have brought the price down. I mean, you can do missions for like $100 million now compared to the billions it would take in the past and is taking for Artemis, right? So SpaceX has succeeded at making crewed launches and general space travel vastly cheaper than anyone else. So in that sense, massive win for NASA. And now America, there's a space program. So now we get to Artemis, which is this program everybody's talking about. So now this is straight up NASA again saying, hey, for decades now, we've only focused on low Earth orbit. We've focused on getting satellites into space and launching telescopes and the International Space Station. Artemis program is specifically to get a sustained presence on the moon. Our goal now by NASA explicitly is we are going to make a moon base. And so this is what this launch is. This is Artemis 2. This is one of the thing that we're talking about, this moon mission. This is the second of the 5 currently planned missions where we are progressively working towards getting a moon base.
So this one's just a flyby though, right? That's my understanding. They're not.
Yeah.
They're just studying the moon.
Yeah. So there's 5 currently like concrete missions with obviously the intention there will be more in the future. Artemis 1, I believe, happened 2 years ago. That's an uncrewed test of the rocket system and Orion and all this stuff that they shoot into space. So 2 years ago, it was like, let's just make sure this can get into deep space. This is Artemis 2. So this is round 2 of the whole program. And this is why we are sending humans to the moon, but not onto the moon, right? They're flying around the moon. And really the core mission here is test that all this stuff works, test that humans survive, test that we can get in and out of deep space, all these things with actual humans, right? So what I think is actually the really exciting one is Artemis 3 is meant to happen next year, 2027. And that's going to be a test to dock with the commercial moon lander, which we'll get into in a sec, and that'll take them to the moon and back. But basically, they're going to do like a docking and undocking sort of romantic gesture in space. And then Artemis 4.
So even on 3, they're not landing on the moon yet.
Correct. They're not even going to the moon. They're mid-orbit.
They're really teasing this moon landing thing.
Don't be so impatient.
This
is a problem. You're always on your phone.
Got a moon
you always
landing
need something
in the 70s, in the 60s.
I'm looking at Artemis 3 on my phone. I'm swiping up. Why isn't it at the moon yet?
Artemis 2, 3, 4. 5. Okay. Which Artemis number do boots hit the ground?
4. So the plan is early 2028, we're going to the fucking moon. Human beings are landing on the moon on Artemis 4. We are on 2 right now. So again, 1 is just, hey, can our shit get into deep space? Let's double check that. 2 is, can our humans get into deep space? Let's send them around the moon. They're going to look at it. They're literally going to look at it, and it's going to be cool, and it's going to be hype, and we're going to show we're ready to do this. Artemis 3 is testing that basically the system that's going to get them to and from the moon. Artemis 4 is when they are on the moon. Artemis 5 would in theory be later that year or the following year, like late 2028, 2029. And that's like, they're not only going to the moon, we're starting to establish the base.
They're sending hammers and they're going to start.
Yeah. And just hammers, because we're going to use moon rocks. Hammers and Flex Seal.
You want to use the local delicacies.
It feels like such a long timeline for something that is all done on sound stages.
It is crazy. But you know, I got a question for you. As a recent space expert, because I watched Project Hail Mary in Hong Kong with Aiden. Are they scouting hot school teachers for solo missions for this? Is the goal is to get a quippy
school teacher, and he goes like, I don't know if I could be on the mission. Yeah. I don't fucking, sorry, I've got a lot of baggage about this movie. I got a lot of, everybody loves it. I'm like the only person who doesn't like it. I'm going insane.
To be clear, I do like it, but I don't think it's one of the top 50 movies of all time according to IMDb. It's a very Redditor loved movie, but are we going?
I think we're going to have to ask Senator Mark Kelly, this incredibly decorated air pilot, space commander, senator. We're gonna have to ask him, hey, were you someone who was back on Earth disillusioned, and then a British professor said, follow me, and took you into a lab that was like hidden behind some bushes?
She's German in the movie.
German.
Oh, is she? Okay. I'm going off of Interstellar, by the way.
Mark Kelly was kind of like a Ryan Gosling type.
Mark Kelly, would you describe the new candidates for the moon missions to be Redditor core? I have tons of important questions for him.
When they asked you to command your first mission, were you sitting on the front porch of an old kind of cabin smoking a cigarette? And when they came up, you said, Sergeant, it's been a long time. You know I gave that all up. Because that's the only people they hire. It's ones who said they've given it all up.
Did you build a moon model mission out of duct tape and string to like showcase the NASA's plan, and then everyone agreed with it and made you the greatest? I'm sorry.
Sir, there might not be
at,
a humanity
the NASA
left.
line item budget and seeing like $150,000 for original Hans Zimmer soundtrack they played in the cabin.
That would actually be worth it. If we had an original NASA Hans Zimmer soundtrack for each Artemis mission.
But fixed cost. I swear to God. If Hans Zimmer keeps driving up the price for 2 years.
Hans Zimmer always goes cost plus. They don't tell you
he's
that.
Classically cost plus. I will say you talking about the stream at all? Have you seen the stream?
Yeah. There was 150,000 on Twitch yesterday when they hit the record for the farthest we've ever been from Earth.
Yeah.
We hit that. Cool milestone. And there was 600,000 people watching on YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube was massive.
It's like a huge, this is genuinely an incredible moment of people being excited about space and realizing this. And I don't want to say the hard parts are done, but getting to Artemis 2 is a lot harder than
it was very cool.
Program.
There was like a global chat. Everyone was pretty excited, and I heard this is the first one where they had the ability to stream 4K video while they were doing it. That was the idea. It didn't seem 4K to me, but I guess I don't know. That's what I read.
Yeah,
and so it was. It was pretty cool.
I had a question. So there's this timeline that we have for this set of missions to land on the moon again, but isn't China has their own set of missions? They're trying to get there in a faster period of time or a similar period of time?
Yeah, I didn't write down like all the exact timelines. Basically, they have been sending landers that are going to the moon. They landed on the I want to say far side of the moon or South Pole, I forget which. But they did that before us. They landed a robot, did it first try.
Yeah.
Their space program has matured insanely fast. They also now have their own International Space Station they've had for a few years. The U.S. is trying to set up these space accords so that we can all agree. Everybody will sign a pledge to say, this is how we're going to deal with taking land on the moon and how we're going to do with disputes and getting rid of how you're going to dispose of things in the space area if it falls to Earth or the moon or whatnot. It's called the Artemis Accords, and China won't sign it. And so there's genuinely a space race going on now. China has explicitly said that their goal is to land someone on the moon before 2030. So there's a genuine race going on here. Our best timelines right now for Artemis 4 is early 2028. We have someone on the moon. But what's crazy is In fact, let's get into this. The thing that's really strange about Artemis, there's 3 components that are going to get us to the moon, okay? First is the SLS, the Space Launch System. This is essentially the rocket and all the things that you imagine that, take our payload into orbit. This has been a NASA-directed thing. It's with a whole bunch of traditional kind of aerospace contractors. It's been very expensive and very slow, but we have a thing that as of a couple days ago, we successfully launched somebody into space, right? Then there's Orion, which is the capsule that the crew are in. So generally with space, you have the giant rocket that gets the payload into space, then the payload goes off and does its own thing. So Orion is what the human beings right now in space are in. They're driving the thing around. They're going to come back. However, NASA's part of the whole role does not include getting Orion, which is where the people are in, to and from the moon. So that piece, which is a pretty important part of going to the moon, we have getting them into space, we have them being in space, and we need to get them to the moon and back. That part is going to private contractors. So they put out contracts for companies to pitch that they could get Orion, the capsule, to and from the moon. Guess who won the contract? It was SpaceX. Yeah. So SpaceX, they wanted to give 2 different providers the option to get Orion to and from the moon. In 2021, they gave the $3 billion contract to SpaceX, and they wanted to give it to multiple people, but they said they didn't have the funds. So Blue Origin, which is Jeffy Bezos' company.
Jeffy B.
Very, very unproven company so far, although they're starting to do basic things, right? We've talked about this a little bit in the past. They sued and they said, that's not fair. You can't just give one contract. We weren't being seriously considered. And so in 2023, NASA gave them a $3 billion contract to develop a lander for Artemis.
That's so baller. We should
5.
I don't think we were considered.
I don't understand.
I don't think Lemonade Stand was considered for making a lander, and we should sue.
I knew I forgot to do something yesterday.
This is only from the loose description that I've been given. But this sounds like when X or Twitter said they were going to sue because advertisers were leaving the platform. They sued because they didn't get picked?
I don't know enough details.
I do know that this is weird because I knew about this from my dad growing up and military contractors and stuff. But my understanding is that it needs to be as transparent as possible because these contracts are so valuable. And if someone gets picked really instantly, almost everybody will sue because they're like, hey, this needs to be really above board.
You didn't give us a fair shake.
Yeah, everyone needs to have a fair shake. And it's this happens for down to who puts the waste baskets in a building.
I see. Everybody needs to be given the appropriate amount of time to win the contract, whether it be Blue Origin or a small company run by Jonah Hill and Miles Teller. It's
right. Yeah, Jonah Hill, and Miles Teller, you and me. Let's all
our military contracting company.
Yeah, I think we could launch a rocket.
I don't know Are we referencing the movie again?
This
episode's gonna rip for people who watch this movie. Okay, so Blue Origin, and it kind of makes sense, right? SpaceX is the one who's delivered. The only other company you contracted with for this type of stuff, Boeing, fucked it up insanely hard. So it's you'd probably go with SpaceX. But Blue Origin protested. They came back with a good contract. They were given an offer. And so now there are 2 competitors to, again, the third very, very, and very, very, very important and very hard part of this whole thing, which is getting the capsule to and from the moon. It's not just you're getting it to and from the moon. Remember, you need to get a thing near the moon to then take it to and from the moon with lots of fuel. That's a hard fucking problem to deal with. And so both of them are now competing to try to develop the lunar lander that will get this thing to and from the moon. And that needs to happen by 2028. In 2 years. And so how is SpaceX doing? Well, they're doing fucking terribly. Starship, the giant ship that they've been talking about that Elon's been promoting, that's their pitch for how they're going to get it to and from the moon. A variant of that called the HLS, the Human Landing System. So I want to show you this image. If you pull this up, Perry, this is bonkers. This is the plan for how SpaceX is going to get Orion to and from the moon. First off, SpaceX will launch a Starship into orbit to serve as a propellant depot. To put that differently, they're going to launch a Starship into space whose whole goal is just to store fuel. Then SpaceX will launch multiple additional starships as tankers, which will deliver fuel to the depot starship that they have in space. Okay. This is estimated to take 10 to 20 launches they're going to need to send of Starship to go up to fuel the one that they have in space. Finally, the HLS Starship, the one that will actually go to and from the moon, goes into orbit, will dock with the depot Starship, receive all the fuel, and then go to the moon and start hanging out in the moon's orbit. At this point, later on, NASA's own program will launch Orion into space. Orion will go to lunar orbit, and they will connect in orbit around the moon, at which point Starship will take it to the moon. They get out, they do whatever they want to do. Starship will boost back up and continue to hang out in lunar orbit. So it's not just that SpaceX is like launching a thing that's going to take them. It's like at least 20 launches of Starship, one of which is a fuel depot, 18 or whatever of which are tankers, and then the third one is a specialized to take them to and from the moon. Now, that all sounds awesome in paper, except they haven't launched a single Starship. This plan takes like 20 launches of Starship, including 2 different variations.
But okay, so SpaceX is a company that has done a ton of successful launches.
Yes.
But it's just of different rockets or of different equipment than this specific model that they need to develop for this project?
Yeah, so the ones you see with SpaceX are Falcon. It's those big rockets, and there's Falcon Heavy, and that can take crew to and from the ISS. It can take a ton and has taken tons of satellites into low Earth orbit. That is different than 1, getting into deep space around the moon, and 2, Starship is meant to be way, 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 way bigger. They just want to have a much larger payload, in part for this mission, and in part because SpaceX sees that as an important part of their future.
I'm confused. Like, why do we need this giant tanker and 20 launches for a moon lander? You said they're only handling the part between the Artemis ship and the moon and back.
Yes.
And they need all this?
I want to scrutinize this. Like, that's my first reaction too.
It sounds stupid, I'm sure.
But in reality, it's like, I don't work.
Yeah.
I know nothing about this. I want to say
I learned from Hail Mary that I, as a simpleton, can probably just like ask the right question.
It's like One Piece. You just need to remember how much you love your friends.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you'll be able to get to and from the moon. I think the main thing is
am I
this
crazy? Well, because they didn't have this for the moon lander in the 70s. So what is the...
I think it's twofold. And honestly, we could ask Mark Kelly a little bit, because it does seem crazy to me. I think the idea is that SpaceX is saying what would be like the ideal version. And the ideal version is that you have this massive ship that can take a huge amount of payload to and from the moon. Back in the Apollo program, we were like we were getting astronauts there with like a rover, and they would explore and then they came back. But the plan of the Artemis mission is to establish a moon base, right? It's a different beast. Yeah. We're not just trying to get humans there to like say hello and plant a flag. The idea is we are going to ship an enormous amount of stuff there so an actual base can be established, ideally on the south side where there's frozen water, like where there's ice. And that's going to be really important to like maintaining a base and getting more fuel and all this stuff. I think this is obviously, I'm not an expert to be able to say this, but it's revealing like how complex this stuff is getting. And this is SpaceX's proposal, and
I never thought it was easy. Yeah, I'll put that out there. I figured this was hard.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just the moon. You can see it from your freaking house.
And so you can go. I mean, you can go to like the Starship HLS Wikipedia page where this is, and there are some like cool graphs. Here's one where, from NASA's perspective, they're like sending Orion into space, and then they're going to and from the moon via the Starship thing, but Elon and SpaceX are behind. And that's what's kind of crazy about this. They're now currently a year behind. A year ago, they were supposed to do a test just to test this idea of these things refueling each other in space. That hasn't even been tested. Starship hasn't gotten up and back. So while you got to give credit to SpaceX, they've been a phenomenally successful, incredibly influential and successful company with aerospace over the past, 2 decades now. They are behind on this, and they're seemingly pretty far behind. And so what NASA is doing...
Do you think the secret to space refueling is somehow hidden in UK politics? Because that is what Elon has spent 90% of his time talking about.
It is certainly...
I'm wondering if maybe they're connected. Like, he's trying to find
It's funny reading about this and being like, the complexity of this company is going way, way, way up. And then he's...
But that's way less about space.
But if Doge can cut out the inefficiencies of NASA, then this suddenly becomes an easy thing. Okay, tying it back to Artemis just real quick. Right now, Artemis is going to the moon and back. This is entirely the NASA program, right? Mm-hmm. But starting on Artemis 3 onwards, that's when the private companies are required because they are the pieces that are going to get you to and from the moon, right? Right now, SpaceX is behind. So even though while SpaceX won the original contract for Artemis 3, the one happening next year, that is now open. Instead of just being SpaceX, NASA has basically said, hey, we're open to whichever company gets there first. Same with Artemis 4, same with Artemis 5. Like it's now kind of up in the air of if Blue Origin proves they can do it first, they might be the ones to get to the moon, even though in concept, SpaceX is supposed to have the next 2 locked down.
Have they proven, what has Blue Origin proved up until this point? Like they got Katy Perry into space?
They got Katy Perry in space.
But besides that, what else, what's their track record in being able to compete?
Was it even
in
space?
I believe they got to low Earth orbit. This is where I don't know enough to say confidently.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're way behind. I believe they have one successful low Earth orbit launch, but it's just, it's nowhere near it's nowhere near proven compared to SpaceX doing 100 of them. But so tying this all back to China, and I want to ask Senator Kelly about this because he mentioned we have to beat China to the moon in like an interview he did about this. China, again, they're planning for getting to the moon by 2030. Right?
Yeah, I have a quote here from a New York Times article.
Yeah.
About this
So getting to the moon by 2030. Our plan is to be landing on the moon in 2028. But it depends. It requires either SpaceX or Blue Origin to have an extraordinarily difficult chunk of this process done. They're currently behind, and they are going to potentially be the barrier between us actually hitting that timeline or China getting there first.
Yeah, they say Chinese astronauts are aiming for a first moon landing in 2030, as you said, in theory, many months after the U.S. But the Artemis program has been proceeding in fits and starts, while Chinese space program has been driving forward with formidable focus. And even NASA acknowledges that it may lose this round. They may be early, and recent history suggests we may be late. This is Isaacman, the quote guy from NASA.
Yeah.
So it's clearly like if timelines go, like you say, according to plan, the U.S. is ahead on this landing. Although I wonder what it matters. If it's a few months difference here or there.
I would like to ask.
There's
the symbolism of it. There's potentially it's like whoever gets there first, like gets
Claims
the prime
land.
territory. Yeah, I don't know how it works. Yeah.
Each country wants to build a base near the southern pole where it can extract resources like frozen water, hydrogen, and helium. Each wants to build nuclear reactors on the moon to power its lunar bases. And each wants to launch missions from the moon to go into deeper space.
Yeah.
So this is
the explicit goal of this by NASA is that we build a moon base which helps serve as the launching point to go to Mars. So there's the long-term focus here. I just hope those crazy bastards close the moon.
It's like, first of all, true. Second of all, if I want to go to Mars, I never book a flight with a layover. I want nonstop, and I do not want to be stopping at the moon. It's a pain in the ass.
The moon's airport fucking
The moon's airport is underdeveloped.
Man, do you know how expensive McDonald's is in that place?
It's not good. And so maybe you could have a fucking moon stop, but I'm going direct.
Right.
I fly direct to
You're
Mars.
a bit of a direct guy.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know if I'm picky like that. I'm
Okay, we'll be stuck in the moon TSA, and I'm going to be on Mars. Okay, and it'll be nice.
I think
whoever is first to establish a lunar base will be most likely to have a greater say over what others can do on the moon. Humanity still operates by first come, first served rules.
Well, yeah, it's moon rules.
It's moon
Moon
rules.
rules.
You think there's rules on the moon?
I mean, I guess if someone makes a base in a spot you want, you can't do anything about it. You'd pick something else.
Well, you could fight them with moon rocks.
Or worse, I guess. I guess with Trump, I never fucking know. He might declare a fucking moon war.
I came up with a new business idea. Who's the president right now.com.
How is this
Where am I going to be selling?
Doug, how is this a business?
How is this a business?
What are you selling?
Shirts. It either says the current president's name, and it says below, this is the current president.
Don't you think
now.
that could be misconstrued as a political support and not like a...
No, it's a fact. It's like a fact machine. Well, because what we're going to do, we're going to launch a new product that's what's the longest river. And that way,
The thing
anything
is,
you want.
You at home might have a business idea that's worth doing.
Yeah,
And
right.
if with
Unlike Doug, you might have one that's
Add
like
something to the
actually
world.
adds
and
value.
if
Make
you
a
want to
difference.
sell things to customers from all around the world, Shopify could be your little gateway to being able to do that.
That's
Turn
how I
your
can
what
do
ifs
it.
into with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/lemonade. Go to shopify.com/lemonade. That's Shopify. Say it again.
That's shopify.com/lemonade. We have laid the groundwork,
Yeah.
I think, but we have Senator Mark Kelly joining us, who will undoubtedly know more about this than we do.
Well,
And we'll
Speak.
speak for yourself, okay? I watched Hail Mary.
tell him about the layovers. Tell him-
I might ask him. You might not be ready for that conversation.
All right, let's get into it. Senator Mark Kelly, thank you so much for joining the program. We've been gassing you up about your incredible history, and we are really excited to talk with you about the Artemis program, about NASA, about your experience with all of this.
Yeah, and we already learned in our little pre-show chat here that the actual moon landing is Artemis 5, not Artemis 4. So good we brought on a real expert. Is there, or did I get that wrong?
There's no way of knowing. We'll ask Senator Mark Kelly. I guess could you start and maybe just, the quick kind of overview of what this current mission happening is, why it's important in your eyes, all the good stuff from an actual expert on this.
Well, let me start with Artemis 1, which was a few years ago, where we flew the Orion capsule with nobody in it. I think they may have had a mannequin sitting in one of the seats. No humans on board, and basically did this mission, right? Go around the moon with Orion, which was a spacecraft, which is the capsule, launched on a rocket called SLS, which is a rather big and powerful 8.8 million pounds of thrust, rocket to get this thing all the way to the moon and back. And that launched a few years ago now, I think maybe, 3 or 4 years ago. And this is the second mission. So this is the same mission done with all the life support systems you need on board, the extra redundancy in the spacecraft that you want for crew members. So 4 crew members to go around the moon on what's called a free return trajectory, which is when they do their translunar injection burn, that's also their deorbit burn, which normally, like on the space shuttle, you do an orbit around the Earth, but this thing comes back from the moon at 25,000 miles an hour, hits the atmosphere. Not much you can do about it. And, hopefully on Friday they'll get home safely. Artemis 3 and 4 are going to be missions in low Earth orbit, testing out the landers provided by probably Blue Origin and SpaceX. And then the 5th mission will be down to the surface of the moon with astronauts. So that's the summary. And then missions after that should also be down to the surface of the moon, and where we can build what I would say is kind of a more of a permanent presence there, like we did in low Earth orbit with the space station, which was always my destination when I went into space.
So what would you say is the importance of us doing that, and maybe also the speed at which we do it? I know we were talking earlier before we had you on about China also racing to establish a presence on the moon as well. So if you could speak to both of those things.
Well, I mean, it's always good to be first, right? And I know we were first to the moon in the 1960s, regardless of what all those nuts out there say that we never went to the moon.
Let's talk about that too.
We faked it 6 times. That's what I heard.
Yeah,
a lot
6
of fakes.
I mean, the Soviets congratulated us, the people we were in the competition with.
That was also staged.
Yeah,
that
but
was
they
also
were,
part of
they
it.
were also in on it, I think.
No, it's always sad to see that people don't believe like reality. Anyway, I do not want to see Chinese astronauts walking around on the moon before we get back there again here. So does that really matter? I think it does. Some people might say, well, big deal. We, as the United States of America, we have been always on the leading edge of technology, doing hard things, exploration. Hey, we're the only people that successfully land stuff on Mars, right? The Russians have tried a lot of times, and they always crash. And we're good at this stuff. The Chinese are sort of competition, with us now on a lot of different levels, a lot of technology, a lot of innovation. In some military technology, they've gotten a little bit ahead of us. My goal here on the Armed Services Committee in the United States Senate is to get us to catch up. So why is this important? So if we're going to be explorers, which is just in our DNA, it's in our nature to do that as humans. We always want to see what's across the ocean, what's over the next hill, what's on the next planet. We're going to go out there and explore. And if we're going to explore Mars someday and the rest of this solar system, we got to make a more permanent step off of this planet. So it's important we do that. And we get something out of it. You know, people sometimes say to me, why do we spend all this money in space? Well, first of all, NASA's budget is pretty small. It's less than 1% of the federal budget. But the money isn't spent in space. It's spent, you know, here on the ground, good paying jobs people can raise a family on, but also jobs that produce advancements in technology. And NASA doesn't just create stuff, you know, it creates industries. So that's why we need to do this. Ultimately, I don't think we have a choice. And I think America needs to continue to lead in this kind of endeavor.
What do you think of the big hurdles between us landing on the moon in the next couple of years? We talked about how the Artemis program will have SLS launch Orion, and then that will dock with one of the landers that is either from SpaceX or Blue Origin. It seems to a non-expert like myself that there's an enormous amount still to be done and tested. And I'm curious from your perspective, do you feel like we're 10% of the way there, 90%? Like, what are the giant bottlenecks? Like, how does, the average person? Yeah.
Well, I think you got to figure it out. We got a lot of stuff we got to do before we're able to get there and put people down to the surface. We've got to build these landers and test them in low Earth orbit. One of the other challenges is that when we designed Artemis as a mission, missions to the moon, multiple ones, we decided that we want to make this system like kind of reusable. And to do that, it's not like Apollo. In Apollo, the lander and the service module and the capsule all went in one unit, on a Saturn V rocket, a pretty big, biggest rocket ever built at the time. This is separating the crew, putting the crew on a human-rated SLS to get the crew to the moon in an Orion capsule, join up with the lander, and then get this, this system, back. And to get that lander there is on a Starship or New Glenn rocket by SpaceX and Blue Origin. You have to refuel it multiple times in low Earth orbit to get enough propellant on board to get that big of a mass there. That's a challenge. We haven't done in-flight refueling, and I am really concerned about whether, I know we can eventually do it, but what's the timeline going to be? What's going to be the cost? So I've got technical concerns. Both these companies say they can figure this out, but I'm paying close attention.
Can I ask about that? So NASA used to be entirely done in-house, and now there's a ton of it done by private contractors through Blue Origin, SpaceX, Boeing. What are the pros and cons of that? What are your thoughts on the transition to that? Is there a good thing? Is there what? Yeah.
Well, let me clarify something there. We did this commercialization thing during the Obama administration, where instead of having, and you say NASA used to do these things in-house. That's not exactly accurate. We had contractors.
Okay.
But we also had a lot of oversight over the contractors. The change happened during the Obama administration, where President Obama said, hey, we have all these innovative companies out there. Why don't we just kind of throw the money over the fence to them? Let them do this. Let's leave them alone. Let them do the innovation without this vast organization that's going to monitor everything they do. So think of it this way. We had a company, let's say it was Boeing or Lockheed Martin or Rockwell for the space shuttle, others. And for every one of those company employees, there was like a government employee kind of watching what they're doing. So we got away from that. We let them not only build the rocket as a true contractor, we sort of let them own it. Like it was their thing and we're buying a service. So that's the model we went to. And with the landers, certainly we're kind of in this same model, but we've always had contractors. The big question is how much does NASA leave them alone to do their job? And so far with the space station, with the commercial cargo and then commercial crew programs, it has worked really, really well. yeah, there were delays along the way, but I got to say, I think, SpaceX in particular has done a really good job meeting the moment and really bringing down the cost of what it takes to get not only cargo to low Earth orbit, but getting people there as well.
Are there, besides the cost savings, have there been any other notable benefits or improvements? Or is that really, I mean, that being the main benefit from this all?
I'd say it's probably the main benefit. The thing about like risk assessment and how safe something is, you usually don't know until you start having like failures. But the Dragon capsule, which launches on a Falcon 9 rocket that goes to the space station with people, has been, very safe so far and very successful. But also they've driven, because of the reusability of the first stage, they have driven down the cost. And also because they're able to, turn it around and fly it without like a huge army of people. They've got the cost down of getting stuff into low Earth orbit to, down by an order of magnitude, 10 times, I think, compared to the space shuttle. Certainly every space shuttle mission cost about $900 million to fly. SLS is rather expensive as well because we just build so few rockets. But SpaceX builds a lot of rockets and launches a lot of things into space, so they've got the cost down. And that's been I'd say, the biggest benefit. Does not have the capability of the space shuttle, right? The space shuttle, by far the best spacecraft ever in terms of the ability to do things. You could take 7 people into space. You had a cargo bay the size of an 18-wheeler truck, basically. Yeah, it was about 30 feet long, so maybe not that quite long, but you could carry 35,000 pounds into orbit in that payload bay. Had a robot arm where you could do stuff. You could put people on it. You could move modules around. And it had an airlock where people could go outside. So best spaceship ever built, in my opinion. Decent rocket ship. Horrible airplane.
Okay, I want
Worst airplane I've ever flown.
I really want to ask because it's not every day, probably maybe twice a week only do I get to talk to an astronaut. So I want to, you were on 4 missions, you commanded 2 of them. In my heart, you commanded the last one. I don't believe in mission 135. You're the final commander of the shuttle. So kind of open-ended, it's a little trite, but what's it like being in space? And I'm curious also if you could relate that to the current mission of, Artemis 2, we're going around the moon, we're testing this capability to be able to land people there. And, when I go to the NASA website, they list 40 different scientific experiments that are really valuable. And I get that conceptually, but like, what are you actually doing? Like, if you're an astronaut in space, like, is it like chemistry class in high school? Is it crazy? What is the experience like of actually being in space? You were there for like 50 days, right? Something like that?
54 days. All my flights went to the space station. My first flight, we brought up a lot of cargo and people. So a lot of my time there was spent transferring that cargo. But first, before you transferred the cargo, you had to take the module out of the payload bay with the robotic arm, which I did. I was one of the robotic arm operators, and you had to connect that module to the space station. So you got to do that, and then you got to open the hatch, and there's all kinds of work, and then you got to transfer thousands and thousands of pounds of cargo, put it all in the right place, and then you got to put that module back into the space shuttle payload bay. On my second mission, it was the return to flight mission after the Columbia accident. It was the second one. So we had to test all this new capability. We also had a logistics module. My third and fourth, I brought up the Japanese laboratory and had to get that installed and outfitted. And then on my fourth was the alpha magnetic spectrometer. And during all those missions, we were doing spacewalks. Not me, because I was always the pilot or commander of the space shuttle, and they don't let us go outside for obvious reasons. We got other people that can do that. And
did you want to? Is that a bummer?
No, I would have loved to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a bummer.
Were you like peering through the glass at them? That's got to be brutal.
Put your hand on the glass.
Watching my friends have fun outside.
The boss and
outside. So what I'm watching for is just like, what's the bad thing that's going to kill these people, at any moment.
Right.
So it's a very tense 8 hours plus
Oh my God.
when you have people outside that it's remarkable that we've made it this far and done all these spacewalks, I think, well in excess of 100 now. And we haven't, had somebody seriously injured or killed. So you're really, really busy during these space missions. And shuttle crew members aren't doing a ton of science. It's the space station people that are, that live up there for the case of my twin brother. I mean, you think I have a lot of time in space, 54 days? My brother has 520 days in space.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
over a year.
A year and a half. That's insane. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I did want to ask you, just because of the shuttle era that you were flying in, is there sort of a like mental preparation or a nervousness that you had to deal with? Because in the wake of things like Columbia or Challenger, I'm just wondering, like, the nerves that must go into operating a mission like that.
Yeah, I mean, you realize the risk, right? I mean, when you consider the number of people that flew on the space shuttle, 14 of them, and I don't know what the total number is, but it's probably a few hundred. 14 of them are dead. Out of 135 missions, we lost 2 orbiters. So it is a risky thing to do. You get it. You understand that there is a lot of personal risk for you. The way I think about this is like, what's the reward? Not to me personally, but to our country in our ability to do this and do exploration and, push the boundaries of technology forward. There's a tremendous amount of progress that we can make. So it's worth it, even though there's risk for me personally. But especially like on my second flight on the heels of the Columbia accident. Yeah, I remember, especially during reentry when Columbia started to break up, we knew, after entry interface and at what Mach number the vehicle started coming apart. I remember, saying to one of my commanders, Steve Lindsay, I remember, us recognizing that this is the time that they lost communication with the ground. Because the Columbia started to disintegrate at that point. And those were our friends. 3 of my classmates died on Columbia, my astronaut classmates. I'm also the person that happened to, recover their bodies in East Texas. So, yeah, you think a lot about it, but you have to do your job. And the space shuttle is a very crew intensive, vehicle. So you got a lot to do.
Yeah, so it kind of demands attention and focus. I imagine not a lot. You can't be thinking about a lot else.
No, you can for brief periods of time, but usually you're pretty hard at work.
You've spoken a couple times about the kind of the patriotic or like romantic value of the space missions, like the nature of human exploration and the value of it from that perspective. Outside of that, with something like the Artemis missions and us landing on the moon or establishing a more permanent presence on the moon, could you name some of the more maybe like tangible potential benefits of us having something like that, like access to a specific resource that wouldn't be accessed otherwise, development of a specific technology that wouldn't be developed otherwise? Like, what are the more tangible benefits of this type of mission, would you say?
Yeah, like going down to the surface of the moon and establishing a presence there. Hey, some people will make the argument that we could pull like, tritium off out of the lunar regolith, which is, helium-3, isotope of helium that would be used in fusion power plants if we get to fusion power, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've been saying that.
You have been saying
Doug.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that could be a thing in the future. I think, it's more about like establishing a presence, developing technology that'll allow us to go to Mars someday. We'll learn more about the moon by being there. You can learn some of this with robotics, and it certainly is cheaper. But I think there is a fundamental thing about all this, about sending people, that there is value in doing that.
What's your timeline, your personal timeline, on when you think we will ever put a human on Mars? Will it happen? Is that something realistic to hope for in my lifetime?
Hey, it depends on how we do it, right? And certainly I'm gonna make a kind of an offhand comment here in a second. It's kind of, I'm just joking, but
Sure.
I think doing a real mission and getting people back, I think there's a chance, I could see it in my lifetime. I would like to. But the other option is you do the flight of the lone eagle.
Oh, the no return flight?
Yeah.
One person, one way.
You get somebody there and they don't come back.
Somebody's got to be down for it, right?
I'm joking now.
Send Elon.
Yeah.
Oh, there. I am sure we would find the volunteer. I'm not sure we want that kind of a person on a mission. But in the astronaut office, we used to like joke about that a little bit. You could always do the flight of the lone eagle. One man, one way.
Well, it seems reasonable. It seems like that is something we could do. You're kind of implying that's something we could do now. Like we could get somebody there.
That's right. That's my point. If we really wanted to get somebody there, we could do it. We don't want to do that. We're not going to do that. We're going to get people there. We're going to bring them back. Even Elon talks about, sending people there like on a one-way trip and building this entire, civilization on Mars. And, there's a lot I agree with Elon on like, how he's built his space company, and it's been very effective and, brought down the cost. I don't think we should ever really entertain that. I mean, Mars is a shit planet. I mean, it's really a shitty place to live. Good place to visit. It
bit of a tourist trap.
Yeah.
Once you've seen the tourist spots, it's kind of boring.
Well, I would love to expand on that, because the narrative is, the real value of Mars long term is that it could be a genuine civilization that is self-sustaining, right? And that's certainly what Elon has talked about. Like, do you feel that is like an unrealistic goal, or maybe not the point, or how does that long term for Mars?
First of all, as a goal, I think it's really, really hard. I don't even think it needs to be a goal, because, and I called Mars a shit planet, right? You think we got problems here on Earth, like with carbon dioxide.
You should see Mars Trump, dude. He's way worse.
I mean, no matter how bad it gets on Earth, it's always going to be easier to live on Earth. I mean, even if the big rock hits or we have the super volcano, it will always be easier to survive here for some people than it will be for anybody to survive on Mars long term. I mean, Mars has, the atmosphere is 97%, 98% carbon dioxide.
I'm thinking you want Mars all to yourself.
I live in Los Angeles. It's 95% carbon dioxide smog, right? And I'm fine.
Nope.
I'm living great. So it can't be that hard.
No, it's less than 1%. Even in LA.
Damn it, I did the math
Even
wrong.
in LA. We've got, you remember that whole thing about like 80% 80% nitrogen, about 20% oxygen? Yeah, that adds up to about 100%. The carbon dioxide, despite going up a lot, right, trillions of tons of carbon, and that is, regardless of what non-scientific people say about this, that's causing our planet to heat up. The Martian atmosphere is almost all carbon dioxide.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be really, really hard to live there for an extended period of time. I don't think that should be the goal.
But you think there's a lot of value in just going to Mars, like that still has immense value in your eyes. Okay.
Yeah. We'll have to solve some really hard problems, and we would have the impetus to try to solve those problems in trying to send people there. And they would have to stay, if they want to stay for more than like a couple days, they're going to have to stay there for like over a year, because of the orbital mechanics and the position of Mars compared to the Earth and where the sun is. So you got to stay a long time, and it's going to be challenging.
You're late to the terminal. It's the most embarrassing. You can
only rebook next year.
Right. You go to the United terminal, and you're like, surely you have another flight today.
No, we have no directs back from Mars.
You missed
Doug.
it.
I was wondering, like, because going to Mars was kind of the big space dream for, or like narrative for me growing up as somebody who was really interested in space. And I do, like, I am interested in that being the connection or the potential benefit of going to the moon now, that it's like this easier launch pad for getting to Mars down the line. Outside of these things, though, for exploring other parts of the solar system, other parts of the universe, are there any notable things that NASA is looking to do as far as like probes going to other places, other areas of discovery? I'm curious what else might be getting worked on outside of these things.
Well, I mean, long term, I mean, a lot of people hear about like Elon's, desire to do this, and he's kind of singularly focused on getting a person on Mars. I like that part of his plan, by the way. We talked about the, staying there forever and building a civilization. When you talk to Jeff Bezos about why he built Blue Origin, I don't think he talks about this, much publicly. And the reason he's doing this is, also very ambitious. But he's doing this. He built that company and is trying to compete for these, whether they're national security satellites being launched or landing people on the moon, because of resources. We do have limited resources on Earth. Things will, over decades and decades, it'll be harder to find certain elements that we need for our civilization. And in some cases, those elements and materials are readily available in space on asteroids. Could you bring back those to Earth? Could you get them in low Earth orbit? Maybe you change the trajectory of something and get it into a LEO orbit and then mine those asteroids and bring that stuff back to Earth. Yeah, we're not doing that in a decade or maybe 10, but maybe in 40 or 50 years we could do that. So that's his motivation, to get out there into the solar system. And I think it's got, I think there's a good argument to try to develop the technology to one day be able to do that.
Can I ask you a business question? Because we talk about Blue Origin, they're getting involved in this. We talk about SpaceX getting involved in this. What the hell happened to Boeing? Why has Boeing been such a fall off in terms of their ability to contribute? Maybe I'm wrong. You can tell me. That's what it seems like from the outside.
I mean, I'll tell you what happened to Boeing. Boeing was competing for getting crew members to the space station, and they built, this Starliner, spacecraft that couldn't bring Butch and Sonny home because it was kind of janky, right? That kind of had some problems. And that wasn't their first problem. They had software problems before that. And then they had reaction control system, problems when it got on orbit. And there were some serious concerns with it. So it had to come home without its crew. They just have not been able to deliver. So I would say they performed rather poorly. I think they're trying to rebuild their space business at this point. We're going to see what the administrator decides to do, with Boeing's Starliner that, hasn't had a successful flight yet.
With what you were talking about with Blue Origin earlier, with this potential long-term goal of building the technology that allows you to extract and bring back resources from things like asteroids, is there any thought that you have as a senator, like with someone, a private company that's this big, or a person like Jeff Bezos as a private citizen being the vehicle for something like that? Like, what's the balance between government stepping in to, I guess, have control over that type of technology or that type of resource acquisition versus this private company being the vehicle that technology exists at all? Do you have any thoughts about the kind of balance between those two things?
Well, I mean, it's typical of the U.S. government to invest in technologies that get a return, outside of what a private company would normally expect, right? So businesses usually want a return on their investment in 5 years or less. Sometimes you see companies that push that out a little bit. And it's often when you get to basic scientific discovery and scientific research, it's the US government that invests in those projects where the return might not be for 10 or 20 or 30 years. It is interesting that in Blue Origin with Jeff Bezos that he is thinking out multiple decades. I think that's kind of unusual for a company. But he's also a guy who's worth hundreds of billions of dollars. So he can write checks there and invest in his company with a goal that might not even be achieved in his lifetime.
I think we have time for a few more questions.
Yeah, okay.
I know
Do you mind if I
ask
ask you some questions about, first of all, very simple question. What job do you think is harder, being an astronaut or being a senator? Because you're a senator now and I have some questions
or a
about
podcaster.
that.
Which of those three?
Of those three, or a podcaster.
Podcast, no.
There we go.
And there it is. We're
Wrap it up.
I don't know what it's like to be a podcaster. They're in a lot of ways they're very different, right? Being an astronaut is a highly technical job where you're learning how to operate one of the most complex systems ever built by humans, right? The space shuttle, also the space station, very, very complex. And you're working together generally in a small team. As the commander of the mission, you're also especially working a lot with mission control and the engineering team. With being a senator, it's almost like everything is part of your job, like every issue that our country faces, every problem, every way that citizens interact with their government, and everything we do as a government is part of the purview of being in the Senate. So in a lot of ways, it's very, very different. You also, gotta, you gotta work to find consensus. I served 25 years in the military, very orderly. There's a person in charge. Now, when I was generally in charge of things, I always want people to push back on me and, question,
Sure.
The approach. But, being in the Senate is the way I take on this job, it's like a 24/7 job. Don't get a lot of time off. Because these issues that our country is currently facing, especially, are so significant. We have really significant challenges. I think we can solve these challenges, but it is a all hands on deck moment.
You said there's two different to compare, but from the way you described it, it made senator sound way harder. Just from the way you described it there, it sounded more difficult.
Right? Just
I guess they're
extremely different.
I will say, I think you're at the forefront of one of these challenges, which is this First Amendment battle. So I wanted to ask you about that. So you appeared in a video, and then Pete Hegseth, Secretary of War, called it sedition, and then your Navy pension and rank were on the line. Can you walk me through what happened and what was going through your mind in that situation? My understanding is there was a court. Okay, sorry.
Oh yeah, I'll walk you through it. So myself and five other, one senator, some House members, so Alyssa Slotkin and four other individuals, we reminded members of the military that they are not to follow illegal orders. So when orders and the law are in conflict, you comply with the law. It's a basic thing in the U.S. military. Everybody's taught it. We put out a video. President didn't like it. He immediately goes to, they should be hanged, executed, prosecuted. I mean, the guy couldn't even get the order right.
I was going to say, that's feels wasteful, if anything.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
God.
So then he tried to indict us, and the grand jury returned a unanimous, basically take a hike decision. You're not indicting these people. I mean, unanimous. That never happens. Now Hegseth is trying to reduce me in rank and take away some of my pension. I retired as a Navy captain in 2006. After 25 years, he's trying to bust me down in rank, so I sued him. But here's the thing, this isn't really about me. This is about the other 2 million retired service members out there that this administration, this president, wants to take away their rights to speak out against the government. And, that's wrong. And I think it's unconstitutional. And they're in violation of my First Amendment rights. And just by extension, every other retired service member. I've heard from service members, retired admirals and generals, that they have now changed what they are saying and doing because of this administration going after me. So
It's like a chilling effect.
So I'm not on me,
right?
But I think I know it does on others because they've told me. And it's probably a lot of people out there just, they're clamming up because if you say something this administration doesn't like, they're going to come after you. They fired Hegseth fired over 20, I think, admirals and generals.
Yeah.
Either because of the color of their skin, because of their gender, or because he doesn't think they're sufficiently loyal to him and this administration. The oath is to the Constitution. The oath is not to a person that we all take when we get sworn into the military.
I think we're near in time. We want to respect your time. I'm curious.
Yeah.
Just kind of like what, as we talk every week, and you just mentioned, world seems a little scary right now. It does feel like an all hands on deck moment. And I think for a lot of people, particularly at our age, feels like you can't do much, and I'm kind of curious what kind of message you would send to folks. And this could be about the NASA side and what's going on in the science, or generally what's going on with the country. And I'm curious, what you would recommend to people in this moment and how to handle it.
Well, the first thing they should do is they should vote. Young people vote at a kind of an abysmally low rate. Tell you a quick story. When my wife, Gabby Giffords, was first running for Congress, I would come out here and campaign with her on the weekends. And we went after going to like the third nursing home, like third weekend in a row. I'm like, Gabby, why don't we go to all these nursing homes? And she says, well, that's where the voters live. Because retired people vote, young people don't vote. So the first thing is like vote. I mean, and vote in accordance with your best interest in mind. Most people are like just generally hardworking, middle class, people. And we've had policies in this country for decades that really leans in the direction of helping the wealthy, millionaires and billionaires, at the expense of, the rest of us. A very small percentage of our country, I don't know what it is exactly, but a very small percentage at the top now owns as much wealth as the middle class, and it wasn't always that way. And it's getting harder and harder for people to, buy a home. People who used to buy their first house when they were in their 20s, now they're 40.
Yeah,
and that is because of choices that this government, that people voted for, made. They voted to put these people in office, and they made choices that helped millionaires and billionaires at the expense of everybody else. So I would say vote and figure out, who's going to do the better job that's going to help you and your family and people like you. And then, if you got extra time, get involved in issues and try to contribute some way, to public service. It doesn't have to be running for office or serving in the military, but just figure out some way that you can help.
Appreciate your time very much. It was very nice having you come on the show.
Thanks so much, Senator Kelly. It was fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Seriously appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Yeah.
No, Jack is on my phone here, but Jack, Artemis, my understanding, did Jared change this like here in the last couple of days?
Well, from what I'm seeing is 3 was the original planned landing.
That's right.
Pushed it back to that 4 and 5 are landing, but you said 5 was the first.
That's my current understanding, is that 3 and 4 are going to be. Well, maybe they're just thinking about doing. I thought they were going to do. When I talked to Jared last time, he was talking about doing 3 and 4 as a Leo test, and 5 would be the lunar landing. Maybe it just hasn't been announced yet.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe I'm making news for you guys here at the Lemonade podcast. Well, let me just say that there's still discussions whether Artemis 3 or 4 will both be low Earth orbit tests of the Blue Origin and SpaceX lander. You got to do those separately. And maybe 5 would be the first one to the surface of the moon. Or maybe you could go down to the surface of the moon on the 4th one if you get a successful test in LEO of one of the landers.
You know better. I saw actually different descriptions as well when I was researching this yesterday, and I know that it's like you said, 3 was supposed to be landing, that got moved to. So I imagine that's changing, and probably you have the more up to date version than what the internet currently has. But cool, that's great as a backup.
Yeah, I might have the inside scoop. I might be sharing stuff that NASA won't like me to be share. But you know what? I don't work there anymore.
Yeah, that's what are they gonna do? Fire
They
you?
can't.
What are they gonna do?
They can't
Take your
fire me
rank?
now.
Yeah.
And when I sent the gorilla suit to space, they couldn't fire me then either because I had already left.
You send a gorilla? Is that real?
Wait, you sent the gorilla suit to space? I didn't know about this.
Or is that?
Oh, you got to Google the gorilla in space. You watch the video of my brother, racing around the space station in the gorilla
That's
suit.
you.
Oh, that was you. I've seen this.
Wow.
What?
Wait,
Yeah,
is that
that's
you or
my
your brother?
That's
gorilla
your brother?
suit. That's my brother in the suit.
You
and
sent
it's
him the
my
suit?
gorilla suit.
Wait,
I
I've
sent
seen
him a
this.
gorilla
This is,
suit.
this is
Well, the first one I sent blew up on a Falcon 9 rocket. So I had to pivot and get a new one off of Amazon, and it sent it up on a Soyuz.
So funny.
Wait, would you consider instead of sending up on the rocket, just put the delivery address as International Space Station on Amazon Prime?
right.
They have to do
They
2-day
have
shipping.
to do it. They have. It's required.
Yeah, I don't. No, I wouldn't have got there then. I had a, and it wasn't. People think I smuggled that thing on board. I didn't smuggle it on board. I sent it right through all the legitimate NASA channels. And then when I got the video of the gorilla in space, I immediately sent it to NBC News. And then NASA was like, "Why did you do that? Why did you send the?" I'm like, why'd you think I sent the gorilla suit to space? It's to get the video.
That's awesome.
I totally forgot
Wait,
about
just
that.
so I'm understanding, you delivered the cargo and then your brother is in the suit? Is that the order?
Yeah.
I sent the gorilla suit on a Russian rocket to the
Okay.
space station
Okay.
while my brother was there for a year.
Okay. And then that gets delivered while he's there. Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
This
You know,
video's
most
so-
people will send up to their family members like, I don't know, some fucking dried out bananas or something. or pistachios, fancy nuts. But I've actually been to the space station 4 times. I knew what the space station was missing.
the one thing. Everyone up there craves a gorilla.
Oh my God.
That's funny.
Everybody needs every place on Earth needs a good gorilla suit.
True. Awesome. Thank you so much,
Thank
Senator
you.
Kelly.
That was
Really,
awesome.
really genuinely, sincerely appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for chatting with us.
All right, we'll see you guys.
That was
We're back.
awesome.
That was really cool.
Yeah, I super like. That's the type of guy. Unironically, it's the type of politician I would let him cut me up and put me in a briefcase.
So I hope he doesn't want to use that power for that action.
Sorry, it's kind of.
No, look at
I
it.
was kind of zoned out. I'm not gonna lie. I kind of came back in on that.
Yeah, Mark Kelly is Jamal Khashoggiing Doug.
Okay.
I guess that's the.
Mark Kelly would do what to Jamal Khashoggi?
Breaking
Yeah.
news.
You were saying he's kind of a boy because he was shooting the shit on football before it started. and
Yeah,
then
before we started,
he was
he's-
pretty like not PR, affied when he was talking. And I had the thought we were talking about this. I mean, if you guys don't know, he was Obama's choice to replace Joe Biden when Joe Biden was clearly after the debate having to step down. And that was my thought during the interview. It was like, I think he would have done a better job. I think we might have a better shot of not having Trump right now had Mark Kelly ran instead of
His
Harris, but-
resume is just badass.
Yeah, I
as
mean,
hell.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
badass
Astronaut
as hell.
into Marine into
Yeah, flip. But he flew in combat. It was like it's badass stuff. Yeah, and then now senator, cool dude, really cool dude.
Oh, you know what would be even cooler is if we made gigantic conjectures about the Iran war hours
hell.
before the deadline.
Yeah,
Not even
dude.
hours. We are 24 minutes away from the supposed deadline, at which point the Iranian civilization will no longer exist.
And,
is what is-
you might be wondering, why don't you guys wait 30 minutes to see what happens? You have a hard out. I believe you have a dinner
So
It's okay. It's not a dinner. It's the Yard podcast.
Oh, you guys are gonna talk about it there.
Yeah. And then
So if you want-
better coverage.
We're doing the live
Yes,
coverage on the Yard.
live coverage of
Yeah.
what's happening in Iran will be on the Yard, and we're going to give you the pre-show.
Well, aside from the short intro that we did at the beginning and the deadline of this incredible threat of the entire country, the entire people of Iran, Pakistan is apparently asking the U.S. to delay its decision for another 2 weeks, like requesting a 2-week ceasefire. And Pakistan has tried to be the intermediary between Iran and the U.S. I'm not.
Wait, actually, update. Yeah, it was live. Trump has agreed to the 2-week ceasefire with Iran, delaying threat of large-scale bombing campaign. So this is exactly what almost anyone would have predicted, that based on his actions, where he constantly does a massive threat, then backs off. I think what's worth mentioning here is that not only did Iran not really respond to this threat, so they're not taking it seriously either, there's almost a point where, there is at a point where this kind of language is too far anyway. You know, it's like it sets a standard for what you're representing as a country to the world, and having the president, whether or not it's part of a 5D chess negotiating strategy of like, just threatening to destroy another civilization, to bomb power plants, to bomb bridges, to hit civilian targets. Like it's bad on that front regardless. Even if we all collectively know that he backs out on these situations. Like I just think personally, I find it to be like reprehensible. I think it's whack. I think it's,
I mean, I almost find it sounds ridiculous because of the weight of the threat and like what he's saying. But I almost feel out of gas even remarking about it, because it feels like I'm saying that about this guy all the time.
True.
It's like I expect him to expect the kind of worst possible reflection of our country through this dude. So I almost, in a weird way, I almost rather not talk about it, because it feels like I have to talk about it every week. I don't know if that's
that's
I don't
fair.
know if
I
that's
think
bad,
that's fair.
but it's like, it's like, oh wow, he said the unfathomably insane thing about like wiping a civilization off the planet. It's like, even if you were in the camp of like, this is the Iranian people's chance of getting out under the thumb of their repressive regime. It's like, okay, well, it's killing all of them.
That's a perfect example.
All of the bridges. How in the fuck does that liberate people? That's an insane. It's just war crimes.
You've also lost their support.
That's what I'm saying, because I have a guy in Iran who's been talking to me and giving me updates, and I've been against this war since it happened, and I've been saying that, and we had a disagreement. We've been disagreeing, and it's like hard for me to disagree with the guy who lives there, but I'm like, I just don't think this is what America should be doing. And he has been telling me, I don't care about what his goals are. I need whatever chance we can do to get rid of the regime. And I think that's a fair stance to take. I just don't think we should be using our lives on it. But even he is now starting to be like, there's no plan. Like this is because I think when it's becoming obvious that Trump's goals are not that, where he might say a few things like, people of Iran, this is for like, stand back and stand by. We're coming to help you out. Like I said at the beginning, now that stuff is so obviously not even close to what their goals are, the actions he's taking are directly hurting that effort. Like if he does actually strike power plants or bridges, or the civilian lifestyle in Iran will plummet to horrible conditions. And it's already bad, but I mean, it will get horrible. And so, and if they strike oil targets, Iran has threatened to strike oil targets throughout the Middle East. And that, I mean, the damage catastrophe globally from that interaction would be horrendous. And it keeps escalating largely because of his escalations. Again, everything he's asking for is to open the Strait of Hormuz, which was already open before we started. So I don't know, man. I think once that guy pivoted, the guy I've been talking to in Iran, I realized like there is no one seeing an upside here. Because that guy was like the last defender.
Well, and now, okay, so something that I've been trying to follow a little bit is kind of the longer term economic consequences of what's happening right now, right? Because I think there might be this loose idea that in the past month, that if you look, it doesn't, higher gas prices at the pump maybe, but an otherwise seemingly functioning society. And I was watching a video breakdown about this, and to kind of capture why some of the economic consequences haven't been really realized by regular people yet. In reaction to this, a lot of countries around the world are releasing these stockpiles of oil that they have in order to keep prices like as regulated as possible, right? So as a country, you often keep a security, like a reserve of oil in order to deal with turmoil in the market. Or to get through periods like winter months where energy demand is higher and people need to heat their homes. And you might release some of that stockpile then that you've saved up in order to keep prices somewhat normal for people in order to navigate those times. But in reaction to this supply shock now, most countries around the world are selling off massive chunks of their reserve oil supply in order to keep prices normal. But people are already running out of that supply. And we've now are hitting the time in April where the ships that were providing oil through the strait across the country, because these ships move so slow, these ships are now not arriving in countries around the world, and the ramifications of not having that oil are starting to hit this month.
The timeline.
So the first wave of reactions of climbing oil prices has been more like speculative, but now the actual reality of people running out of oil because of this, because of the constraint around the strait, are starting to hit in the month of April, with no exact sign of when this is actually going to happen.
I mean, look, gas prices are already up like 51% globally. It's less in America. Fertilizer prices are up 77%. Like this is all while we're still in the early phases of like people figuring it out and like using reserves and draining reserves. The entire coalition of countries that came together in this emergency to release SPR reserves all at once, it was like 400 million barrels combined, which again is like 4 days of usage. It's like, it's not a lot. They're putting it out along with other sources, but all of this is combining to be not enough if this keeps going on. But what's weird is some countries are getting through. There's that guy, Citrini Research. He sent somebody out just on a boat with a cigar and a pack of beer to go and watch the strait, and he was like filming footage of it. Their tankers are going through, but they're going through this Iranian toll booth they set up where they're just paying in yuan and getting through.
Yeah, there's certain countries that are considered friendly and are allowed passage or have been allowed to negotiate. Like Pakistan, being one of the friendly nations, has been able to send like more tankers through, I think like 20 or something.
Yeah.
Whereas like Japan has recently negotiated and they've been able to send 2 tankers through. France sent one through. And then other countries like are not sending anything through. But even in the place of like these limited amounts of tankers from specific countries that are allowed to get through, that's nowhere near the total oil capacity that there was
of the
before.
strait. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Do you guys know is there a point at which Iran can't threaten the strait? Man, loose understanding, right? You can do it with so little, with drones, whatever, right? But it presumably at some point, if you bomb enough things, they can no longer threaten the strait. I would like a world where we're not obliterating the fucking country, obviously, but
I guess there's this weird trade-off that I don't fully understand of in the length of time that it takes you to damage enough military targets in Iran, they are also able to fight back and damage facilities around the Gulf in retaliation. So whether or not those are like, related to energy production or like loading ships or desalination plants, like every bit of retaliation that happens in the Gulf has lasting consequences outside of this. Like say everybody set down their arms and went back to normal right now, the capacity of energy coming out of the strait has already been greatly reduced because of the amount of damage that has been done to facilities already.
Yeah.
But is it like guerrilla drone operators? Like how are they threatening the strait given how much military, everything has been bombed by the U.S. and
I'll answer
Israel?
your question directly. And that is, there's a 0% chance, no matter how much they bomb, they can stop it as long as the regime is the same. And so unless you somehow get regime change, because they can do it with a $10,000 drone, which is nothing.
Okay.
As long as they have any income, which they still do.
So they have just set up a network that is like
you can
dispersed.
I've seen it. They can set it up with like sheet metal, one of these drone launchers, and then you can send it out, and all it has to do is threaten one ship one time, and then the rest of the ships are too afraid. They can't get insured. Nobody will insure a ship to go through the strait if there's a chance of it blows up, because the loss is so catastrophic. It's billions of dollars of loss.
I think there's also unconfirmed reports of the strait being mined.
Yeah, my understanding is
that's not actually.
yeah.
I don't think that's actually like confirmed, but it's a fear.
Gotcha. I mean, it's impressive that they're still able to threaten this like stretch of water despite how much bombing has happened to them. Like, it's wild.
Yeah, but I think that's just a miscalculation on the part of getting into the war. Like, I think they don't have a navy. They don't have, like, it doesn't matter. Like, the fact is that there's 90 million people here, and they have a regime that has enough money coming in to always threaten that strait forever. Like, it's a fact of their geographic location. And so it's just weird that it wasn't, there was a New York Times article that came out that was deep diving into the lead up to this war and all the different people in the cabinet that were talking. And one of the things they said was Hegseth, Rubio, and obviously Netanyahu and then the Israel government that came in basically made the pitch that this would be easier than they thought it. Like, they would achieve so much militarily that they wouldn't be able to threaten the strait. And that has clearly been untrue.
Yeah.
And it feels like a big miscalculation.
Yeah, I think it was. I was reading this earlier. So Netanyahu is in DC, and they have the head of Mossad on like a call as well. And Israel is pitching like the goals of doing this. And the second set of the two additional goals that they had tacked on to like reducing Iran's nuclear threat were regime change in Iran, like, and replacement of the government with a new secular leader, and fueling a popular uprising in Iran for that to happen. And it was the CIA director, John Ratcliffe, and Rubio both said that this is basically ridiculous. Rubio literally said it's bullshit, like that these goals are completely unlikely to be accomplished if we attack Iran
Rubio's
in this
against
way.
it? Maybe I misread.
Yeah, Rubio said that these goals, like, Israel is basically trying to convince the U.S. to do this, or like why it's good, right?
Yeah.
And they're saying two of the four things that they said were we can fuel a popular uprising in Iran, and we can replace the leader of Iran with a new secular leader and a new secular government. And Rubio in the room said it's bullshit.
Yeah, there was a quote I pulled out, which was from the president turned to General Kane, which is one of his generals for this, and said, "General, what do you think?" General Kane replied, "Sir, in my experience, this is standard operating procedure for the Israelis. They're going to oversell it, and their plans are not always well developed. They need us for this, and that's why they're hard selling." But then Mr. Trump weighed the assessment and said, regime change would be their problem. It was unclear whether he was referring to the Israelis or the Iranian people.
Or the American
But the bottom
citizens.
line was that his decision was go to war would not hinge on whether parts 3 and 4 of Netanyahu's presentation were achievable. He didn't care if that would. Ooh. But it turns out it's his problem. Like, it turns out it's all of our problem. Like, because there is no evidence that it's happening, and without it, they could bomb the strait forever. Like, there's just no way to stop it. The way the drones have changed warfare, it means you can threaten more with no money than you ever could before conventionally. It's what's changed everything in Russia, Ukraine. It's what's changing everything here. And so, yeah, I think it's pretty disastrous. I wonder what's going to happen. But I guess we can all, at least now that we've recorded through the 5 p.m. period, be happy that he did not fucking
Unless he
drop
got
bombs.
the time difference wrong.
Right.
He's like, oh shit,
What,
I'm
it's
at
ET?
Pacific time. And we get to do it all over again. This is one of those
Maybe,
things where
yeah.
like I've never obviously been good at talking about politics, but like this is one where it's so beyond stupid
I'm
and
with you.
awful. I don't even like what do I fucking
No,
say? I don't
I
know.
agree with you in that I actually like talking about politics and I make videos about politics, and I've been uploading less lately because the biggest story in the world is this Iran thing, and the main thing I have to say is that it's bad.
Yeah,
and I don't know what else. Like, it's very frustrating. It's actually frustrating. An interesting angle on it that we can take if we have a few minutes left is that I think a lot of people are feeling this way, and there's been a push in the past day, ever since that tweet, to talk about invoking the 25th Amendment. And I want to give a little tiny presentation on that because I looked into it. Because the idea is like, hey, this has been 1 year. The guy is 1 year in. We have 3 years left. He is getting clearly worse. I mean, you watch a Trump speech from 2016 versus now, he just looks and sounds worse. And I thought he was great in 2016, but he just is a clear difference. And I think these tweets that he's making, I know you said that like he always does crazy stuff, but they're crazier. To me, this is crazier. Talking about the things he's saying, I think this is even worse than it was before. And so the direction is bad. So a lot of people, not just Democrats, there's Democrat senators, but also Marjorie Taylor Greene, Alex Jones, Tucker Carlson. A lot of people have come out in the past 48 hours and said 25th Amendment is ass. That's a direct quote from one of them. And 25th Amendment it was created after JFK was shot, and it's like covers succession of the president. And
because it was like we wanted a living one.
Right. Yeah. It was like, hey, well, he's not really as useful when he's not.
When they did, it's
We
like
should
nobody
wait
liked.
for the next 2.5
Nobody
years.
liked when we did Weekend at Bernie's with JFK.
They brought
after that.
JFK's corpse in the Oval
Yeah.
Office and realized nothing was getting done.
Yeah. So
they
they
had
added
to
this. So they
update.
passed. They ratified the
this
25th.
is
Well,
25th.
founding fathers just didn't think about
They
this
never
one.
thought if someone would die. And so the first 3 articles of it are basically like, what if he's shot? What if he's sick? Whatever. But the fourth one is like, hey, what if he's unfit for office? What do we do? How do we get rid of him? And the bad news I have for everybody watching is that it requires one man to be all in. JD Vance. Vice president is required. There is no other way around it, even if you had all of Congress agreeing. The vice president must invoke Article 25 or 25th Amendment in order to do it. And then he must be agreed by all the heads of the different cabinets. And if they do that, then they can get him out.
JD Vance, I know,
Wow.
would never change his values in order to gain power.
You know what? That's a decent point. Maybe you fucking will.
We fucking read his book on book club, and in his book, he seems like a pretty nice stand-up guy with like good values. And
It's crazy.
And we talked about how upsetting it is to watch somebody who seems like a person who came out of this hard background become this kind of chameleon in office.
Yeah. I mean, a guy who compared Trump to Hitler is now his largest offender. But they asked him about it today, and he went all in defending that specific Truth Social, the one about civilizational wipeout. So I don't know. I don't get a lot of sense that he's the best guy for the job. So I'm very, rallying behind what Mark Kelly said, man. I just think people got to vote. I think, I don't think this is a partisan show, but I'm just so fed up with this guy 1 year in, and I really hope that there's the Senate changes. That's the thing that was impossible, and now 54% chance, which is above 50 on all the betting markets for Democrats to take the Senate. And if they do that, maybe in a world where JD Vance pivots again, it's possible.
I think the one thing I have been thinking about is I am concerned about things like what he had just made some executive order about mail-in ballots, right? Trying to restrict mail-in ballots nationwide.
Yeah.
And I would say other news around him trying to avoid losing in the midterms or potentially running a third time. Like these seeds of those things happening. Not necessarily it explicitly happening yet.
Yeah.
But with this idea of my vote being under threat, or like our collective ability to vote being under threat, my fear was enforced by so many people around him being so lock in step with him.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see as more and more people actually challenge him or fall away, even within his own party. It's actually giving me a little bit of more faith than I used to have of like the institutions holding up. Like if these people that are Republicans are starting to fall away from supporting him, at least vocally, especially in the media, people like Tucker who have
someone like Tucker Carlson who was diehard for getting Trump into power.
If you want like cathartic, someone who used to support Trump is now hate him. Is Tucker's most recent video on YouTube, Tucker on Trump's desecration of Easter. And I watched like 7 minutes of it this morning. And he does this, Trump did this tweet. And it's the one where he says, "Open the straits, you crazy bastards. Praise be to Allah." And he like fucking, he does the Adolf Hitler like shaking as he puts glasses on and then reads it word by word and says, "This was on Easter. Praise be to Allah," using the F word on Easter. And his whole thing is like, it's about how it's immoral, but entirely because it's very anti-Christian, which is a funny angle.
It's
But
way-
he is
look,
fucking
But
brutal.
I'm not
it's an
here
angle
to
he
be-
never would have taken a year ago.
It
You know
is
what I'm saying?
extremely anti-Trump.
Directly.
It's kind of wild to watch.
I think that's the thing. It's like, I'm not here to be a Tucker guy and be like, yes, finally, Tucker speak out. Tucker be the next guy up. I think I'm not aligned with Tucker on
Well, you
most
sort
things,
of are.
right?
I mean, you're like pretty much.
On the
We
pod,
call you
publicly.
Mini Tucker off camera.
well, catch me after 9 p.m. I'm speaking the good word
I think
about Tucker.
Lemonade Stand, you're on one side, you're more of a Tucker fan on
my
the other.
point is, if these like figures in right wing media take public like word or step against Trump, people get more comfortable with taking their support of Trump away.
Yeah,
and I think
which they're doing.
And I think that's the part that makes me, I don't know if hopeful is the right word, but maybe a little more confident that my vote is not as much of a risk as I thought it was maybe like 2 or 3 months
I
ago.
think for him to like radically subvert the democratic process requires him to have some measure of popularity, which is eroding so fast.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, I also am, I'm more.
I don't even know if I'm
strongly
going to
attuned-
vote for him again.
It's like at this point, he's really testing my limits. Like you've had my 3 votes before, Mr. Donald, but
After this Tucker video, I don't know. I might be out.
But I think that's it for Lemonade Stand this week. We'll be back. I'm with this specific topic. Things are changing quickly. Even in the amount of time that we've been recording, they agreed to the 2-week ceasefire, and I'm sure things could change pretty radically a week from now. So, yeah, thank you also for supporting our trip to China. We just got back. I'm fucking tired. I've been going to bed at like 8 p.m.
yeah. Getting up at 2 a.m., jet lagged all this shit.
But
It's been rough.
our trip to China was really, really awesome, and we got to do it because of your guys' support and funding. And if you guys want to check out our extra episode every week on the Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/lemonade stand. But
as well as a ton of, if you join the Patreon, there's a ton of China stuff that we recorded there, walking around different parts of the cities and talking about it. And so check that out.
Space is fucking sick.
Yeah, you
Space is
kind of
dope.
won me over on
About
this episode on space. Like I think I want to read more about it, and your passion was infectious because I do think it's very exciting.
And there's like weird drama between the companies. It's so
Yeah,
interesting.
the business
Space
angle was
drama.
interesting
We didn't even
too.
talk about it, and I kind of didn't want to bring it up. You mentioned it. Boeing has sucked a large one with this project.
Yeah.
Their portion of the whole thing.
He seemed a little, he didn't want to throw him under the bus.
I know. We gave him the bone for Boeing.
Yeah, I was like, hey, Boeing sucks, and he was like, well,
Dude, it's
yeah,
wild. It's wild. But
Maybe
like
they're
they're
Arizona
like too
employer.
big to fail right now
Yeah.
because nobody
Yeah.
else can make it's anyway. Crazy space. Space is wild.
thanks for joining us.
Thanks everybody.
Bye guys.